Mino Line Media presents the Business First Podcast.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and we have such a treat for you today. I am really excited to introduce this woman who's in the studio. She is a radical thinker, a true disruptor, and an equity advocate. And when you think about advocacy, you usually think about, our educational system or our medical system, housing. But Miss Kia Weatherspoon, through her company, which she is founder and CEO, Determined by Design, does all of this dynamic work, her education, designing, helping people reimagine where they are and where they live. She does it all through design. And her politics and her attitude and her history are really something. Like, I think you need to write a book, Kia, but let me introduce you first and get you in the studio so everyone else can be blessed by what I'm discovering. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm super, super excited. I'm really delighted to be here. It's going to be good.
This is going to be so much fun. Alicia, who is actually a good friend of mine, represents you. And so she was just like, you got to have Kia on. And then I started to listen to and read some other things that were out there. And one interview caught me, really had me. And I won't say who it is. People can research and see. You've done a lot of podcasts and you have a lot of stories that have been written about you. But there's so many things to unpack with that. But one of the things you said a lot of dynamic things, and this is going to sound odd that I'm actually starting with this, but it's the one that really struck me when you said, don't ever invite me to speak for Black History Month. I will never show up.
Yes.
And the reason I bring that up, because I was just, as we're coming off of Women's History Month, I was thinking in this evolved society that we're supposed to be in, right? Why are we still only relegating great voices that are Black and great voices that are women to 2 months out of the year? And not to say that these people are not speaking throughout the year, but why are we still confined to these boxes when we say that we're quote unquote celebrating the best and the brightest in our communities? And so that was just one of the things. And what was also interesting about this interview that you did is I love your confidence, number one. I love that I don't know you, but it seems like you show up the same way in all of the rooms that you appear in. And you could hear that the audience was a little uncomfortable sometimes with some of the things that you were saying, but that doesn't ever deter you. So before we actually get into the business of what you do, I want to just get a sense of how you grew into this woman who is so confident and so sure. Every time he mentioned your awards, you were like, yes, that's right. I have many, and they are I'm that good. That level of confidence, really inspired me in listening to that. And so a lot of us in business know what we're supposed to do, or we have skills, but where we lack a lot of times is that ability, that confidence that we have in who we are. And so I'd like you to share with our audience, how you come into that. And you seem to, and not to say that I know you don't struggle at times, right? Because we all do, but how you sit so comfortably in that space.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna work backwards and start with the confidence, okay, and then address the Black History Month statement.
Right.
So I am a child of an addict. And my dad was an alcoholic and drug addict. He was in and out of jail growing up. Another big kind of significant thing in my childhood is my brother. He was incarcerated for 15 years. So a lot of my primary adolescence years revolved around these two men and their struggles and their needs. So I was never really seen as a child or a teenager. Um, and I remember I was, reading this book about attachment styles and dating, and I just casually asked my mom, "What was I like as a baby?" She's, "Oh, you were very independent. Your brother was a preemie, so you learned to walk on your own, hold your bottle, you did all this stuff on your own." And I was like,
Mm.
"Well, was that independent, or did you just give all the attention and all the caring to my brother?" Right? And this is not a critique of my family in any
Wait,
way.
what
It's
just
just kind of
happened?
like, all right,
Is
so
that me? Did you lose me?
I didn't
Wait,
lose
did
you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
It
sorry.
froze for a minute. Okay, so what I got from you was I independent or
Yes. So when I
okay.
asked my mom this question, I go, "Mom, was I really independent, or did you all just meet the needs of my brother and my dad all these times?" So real time today, I feel like the only time I was ever seen, right, especially as it comes to my career, is when I was just Kia. When I was funny, I was charismatic. I wasn't trying to button it up. I wasn't trying to be like code switching
What
and change
is
the tonality of my voice. It was just like, oh, the minute I was just myself, people saw me. And it did start from a place of wanting to be acknowledged and seen. But then it evolved to like, oh, so many other people don't know how to show up as themselves, whatever that means
Mhm.
for them,
Mm.
that they don't know that that's truly how people will gravitate towards you. So I think it was a consequence of life happening not to me, but for me. And because no one in my immediate family was really checking for me, no one told me that, "Kia, you're supposed to code switch. Kia, you're supposed to straighten your hair. Kia," no one
Mm.
told me I was supposed to do these things. So I just leaned into me because that's all I knew. And that's all I had was me for the most part. And I think that confidence, it just evolved and became more pure and not rooted in needing affirmation from external sources or people or things. Um, and then also, I just don't take myself that seriously. Like, I want to be light and be fun and engage with people. And I think confidence comes by also not having to lead with ego. And I think our
Mm.
ego tells us like, "Oh, show up, be proper, be this, be that." That's ego because you're wanting an external thing. Confidence is, I'm gonna just show up and be present for whatever the thing is and not thinking about all the other superficial external things. And I think that's where the confidence comes from. No one told me that. And to go into the Black thing, my greatest superpower is that I'm Black and I'm a woman. Everywhere else tells us like, "Oh, I'm the only. Oh, great, I'm the only. I'm gonna show up and show out and be here because I'm the only in this room that can do it." So
Mm.
I'm many things, but I want to be celebrated for who I am at my core, and that's all year round. That I'm fabulous and Black and a woman. So Black History Month and Women's History Month, hard pass. No, thank you. I want it all year round. I'm not
Mhm.
regulated to just those two identifiers because I'm many things.
Well, what a blessing, right? To have been able to take the benefit of having to be this independent child because you could have used that as a crutch, saying like, nobody was there for me or nobody was around for me or I never felt seen or protected and that could have spiraled you in a whole different direction. And so for you to understand that my circumstances happen to be a blessing for me and I can use them to empower is also such another great lesson because we all have issues from our past or from our childhood from past relationships that we could play victim easily. Like my hand is raised as well, right? And it's being able to recognize that these situations really serve us if we can take the lessons and then move on.
Yeah, and I think that's why I always say like life didn't happen to me, it happened for me. And I never try to shy away from like my origins, right? And again, it took a long time and a lot of theory to be able to unpack it in such a succinct manner. But no one told me I couldn't. No one told me I shouldn't or should do it this way. So I just did it my way. And there's a beauty in that ignorance of like, it's kind of like all the things you don't know, you don't know. Well, all the things I didn't know, I chose to do because I know I wasn't supposed to. Right? There's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in that.
And that's what you do, actually. You create beauty in spaces. And so let's talk a little bit about, well, and again, there's so much to discuss with you because it was in part your brother's incarceration that inspired you in the area of design. So please tell us a little bit about what visits to your brother made you feel.
Absolutely. When I was in high school, my brother ended up getting incarcerated, and he ended up going to prison for 15 years. And I viscerally remember the very first time I ever walked into a prison facility. I remember how inhumane, institutional, the stale air, the colors, the lights, the clanking, just the shuffling of bodies and people, mostly Black and brown people. I remember it, and I just remember this emotional reaction like, no one should be in here. Like, this isn't a place for people to traverse and move through. And every time I would go, I would have this huge emotional reaction or a trigger, and I would start to think about this experience for the children coming into that spaces, the spouses, the parents, other siblings, the guards, and even the men who were in this space. And it resonated deep in my soul, like deep in my soul, that experience. And I don't, sometimes we don't realize the impactful of a thing real time. And that was one key reason as to why I wanted to create spaces for people and become an interior designer. But it didn't happen like right after that. It was a very kind of winding path of joining the military and going to the Air Force. And I joined the Air Force in 2001 and got to my first duty station in July. And then immediately September 11th happened. And I was on my first of 5 deployments in the Middle East. And this is like a couple weeks after September 11th. And I'm at Al Udeid Air Base in Doha, Qatar. At this point, it's a bare base. And I'm in a tent with about 13 other women. And I needed some privacy. I needed to cry because I was a young 19-year-old, my first time out of the country, my first time away from my family. So I took some sheets and I hung it from the top of my tent around my cot, and I made 3 sheet walls. And I bawled like a baby for 15 minutes. And it was something about how that space healed me and brought me comfort and solace. And I would do that 4 more times on different deployments. And when I got out of the military, I was like, man, I want to do this thing where I create spaces for people. And this is where folks go, oh gosh, that's such a cool story. And I'm like, but is it though? Because I just said I have to go to prison and war to realize my space and my environment mattered. That to me has always been like, man, again, it happened for me, not to me. But that's when I started to realize the true impact of space and how Black and brown people traverse through spaces in our communities. And that's why I became an interior designer.
And, and you saying that, most of us don't even think about it. So when you talked about prison and war, but it's the school buildings. Like, I volunteered in a school last year, and it was just, I was depressed. And I only went in for an hour. But these are things we just do because we just know that this is the system. This is how it's set up. Medical facilities are like that. And so most of us are just thinking like, this is just how it is. And, but you have decided that this is not how it has to be. This is not how it has to stay. And you have built a company that transforms spaces and in effect then transforms how people feel, how they think. You said that a homeless person or I think someone who was previously homeless had said to you, like, they didn't even think that they could live in a space like this.
Absolutely. When people think about interior design, they have a lot of preconceived notions like, oh my God,
Right.
HGTV, luxury, this and that, like beauty and all the things, right? But when people think about interior design, they don't think about affordable housing, low income housing, Section 8, transitional housing, the ghetto, however you want to talk about it. They don't think about the dialysis center. They don't think about the schools. They don't think about like what those spaces actually look like. And a big part of our work focuses specifically on affordable and low income housing. And we do that because interior design is not a luxury for a few, it is a standard for all. And if you've never lived in the ghetto, if you've never lived in Section 8 housing, how you can't fathom how inhumane, sterile, has a poverty aesthetic that these spaces have, and but so close, actually resemble some of the prisons I went to visit my brother in. We're housing people in these deeply institutional spaces with all hard surfaces, no light, no natural light. And you mentioned schools, and I like to think about, we all went through the global pandemic. And if you think about any housing project in the US that was built 30, 50 years ago and what those spaces look like, people had to quarantine inhumane housing projects. Inhumane. And no one should experience that. So our work is rooted in saying, and I'm going to take this back to the Black History Month thing, and it's like, how come? Because no one speaks up. No one says, no, don't put me in your Black History Month bubble. No one has said, hey, these housing projects that have been developed that has cost millions of dollars, they are ugly. They are trash. People should not live like this. You are doing a disservice to these communities. No one had the courage to say it, and no one told me I couldn't, so I do.
So you did. And thank God, because even in you saying it, people have expressed to you verbally how these people in quotes, don't deserve to live there. Or they deserve to live there, but they don't deserve to have the quality of those spaces elevated.
Absolutely. It's sometimes it's the most, we were designing this lobby, and we were like, we wanted to put like a seating moment here for when they walk in. They're like, well, we don't want anybody sitting here. And I go, well, what if I'm a mom and I have like my kids, a stroller, I'm trying to go through my purse, I'm waiting for an Uber, where would I sit? What if I was a 67-year-old woman, maybe with some mobility issues, and I needed to take a beat or a moment of respite? Well, yeah, okay. Well, let's do this platform seating element. Great, we designed this beautiful platform seating, and we put power outlets in it. And we don't want to put any power outlets in there. I go, well, why not? We don't want people to sit there and charge your phone. How many times have you been a place where you needed to charge your phone? And again, what if my child needs to call me? I don't think people realize the bias that exists when they talk about people from low-income communities.
Yeah.
In the luxury apartment building, we want folks to be able to gather and have amenities. In the poor buildings, it's like, we don't want them to congregate. You want the whites to be able to gather and commute, but you don't want us to do that, right? So a big part of our job is challenging those biases head on. And it goes back to this idea of confidence. Everyone they say to us sometimes, like, did you really just say that to the developer, the real estate developer, the housing authority, or the funding source? Did you really just say that to them? Yeah. Why didn't you? Because you know it's wrong. But you're operating from a place of scarcity as a business owner. If I course correct the person that gives me money and pays our bills, will I get the next check? Will I get the next project or the next fee? I am not in service to the people who stroke my check. I am in service to the people who live in the buildings we design. Because what we just saw during a global pandemic, that buildings built 50 years ago affects this generation of people. So I can't be afraid from a scarcity perspective to not get the next fee. I'm more afraid that 5 more generations of people will traverse through inadequate and inhumane spaces. That's what
That
I'm
is
more
such
afraid of.
radical thinking in terms of being in a service industry, right? Because we usually think that you're in service to the people who are giving you the business, right?
No.
Because if you don't, like, so what allows you to, I mean, obviously the success of what you're doing shows that it does work, that you can speak up and that you can call out bias and you can call out things that just don't even make sense, right? I mean, it's bias, but even just in terms of that you can call out the bias, you can call out the things that don't make sense. But it's, would you say that it's because that you are so steadfast in what you believe and what you know you can deliver, that that continues to give you the confidence to just not deal with the bullshit?
I think it's both and. Business 101
Mm-hmm.
is people have to like you to want to do business with you. People buy into people. And so a big part of that is because I'm not cold twitching and I'm showing up as Kia, they get a little bit buy-in because they see me. So they know I'm coming from a place of authenticity. Mm-hmm. And then the way we design or how we design and how we come up with our design concepts is deeply rooted in the narratives and histories of neighborhoods and communities. So our whys to build, to design a better, softer, vibrant community room is not rooted in ego of our industry, like, oh, mid-century modern is in and Pantone's color of the year is evergreen fog, right? It's not rooted in that.
Right.
It's rooted in the stories and the narratives of people, right? So I'm using the people's and the community stories to say, this is why we made this design decision. This is why we made that design decision. It's rooted in this historical reference point. So at every touch point, they see it's the people that we are serving and creating for, which makes our why different. At every instance, it's about the people, right? For us as a design firm. And it resonates with them. And everyone else is afraid. It's a scarcity mindset. We are not afraid. Because I know what the alternative looks like.
Right.
We're just not afraid. And I think that they find it oftentimes, they'll be like, thanks for pushing us in that way. We've always done it this way, but, no one's ever said that we were doing it wrong. And a lot of times we do like these empathy exercises and we'll say to a real estate developer, close your eyes and, describe a space that you want to have a birthday party for your kid in. And they'll describe it and they'll say soft, flexible, this, bright colors, da, 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 da. And they never say specifically like fluorescent lighting, VCT, these are building materials and products, light, great paint. They don't say specific products. They all talk about a feeling.
A feeling.
So then I'll pull up a picture of an ugly multi-purpose room. And I go, is this the type of space that you would want to have a birthday party for your kid in? And they go, absolutely not. And I go, well, tell me why. And then they go down this rabbit hole of, is ugly, is this? And I go, well, do you know this is from your project from 3 years ago?
Wow.
And I do a lot of care, a little smile, a little sugar on it. I put a little sugar on it. Because it's not a gotcha moment.
Right.
It's you develop and you're supposed to lead with empathy. Yeah, that's how I do it. I lead with empathy. Empathy and service. And service is such a dirty word. Like, oh, I'm not a service provider. Yes, I am. I am in service to people. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to serve others. My craft just happens to be interior design. And I love that. I love that.
I want you to speak a little bit more of, because as a storyteller, I would say that design is a very important element of the story. But you would say that design, particularly as you craft your business, is the essence of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is what is like I'd like you to expand further on. You don't go with the themes that are popular. You start with the elements, the essence of the people who were there. And so what does that process look like? And what does it evolve into?
Beautiful question. So it starts to look like we start with who are the indigenous caretakers of the land, right? So we're going all the way back to wherever a building is located or whatever new building is about to go up or be renovated, tall apartment building. We start with understanding what's the indigenous story that existed there. We're looking for native tribes, cultural relevance, festivals. What was that tribe? What were the meanings behind those names? Then we're coming a little bit more forward. What historical moments, facts, makers, artisans, movements, demographic shift, ethnicity shifts, what was fabricated in this particular neighborhood, even more present day? What are the community organizations that exist? What are the demographics right now? Who are the makers and the artisans and the movements? Artists, right? So we're taking this entire historical reference thread and pulling it all the way through. And then it becomes what we call like our concept statement. Or for us, it's our prayer and it's our intention for any project. And it sounds like at the summit of virtue. That's one concept. It sounds like humanistic hues of devotion. It sounds like marks of a triumphant crest. And these are our intentions and our prayer. And we get to these statements by, even when I say them, I close my eyes because you got to feel it. And when my team, my amazing team who I adore, when they're doing this concept process and they're searching for the research and the little nuggets, I say, what are the things that get you excited? Like, oh, that was exciting. Did you know this? And oh my God, that was exciting. And this person and this happened, right? And look, at sometimes there is traumatic things that happen, like, yo, that happened, right? Wow. So it's not that we're just looking for the kind of happy, we're looking at neighborhoods in their totality. And we do this kind of wordplay, and then we kind of make this statement and this prayer. But every time we do it, I say, close your eyes. Do you feel it? Do you feel it? No, how does it feel? Because if you don't feel it, you won't fight for it. And like you just shared, there's a lot of stuff we got to fight for to stay in our projects. And that's how our design process starts every single time. And it never fails. The real estate developer or the housing, they'll go, man, we didn't know that. Wow, you all did all that digging. Wow. And it's kind of like, how come all these other consultants that you pay don't do that? And how come you, as the person developing on this site or this land, how come you don't know the history and the narrative of this place and these people's story and pulling that through, right? That's how our creative process looks like. And our color stories and design moves and materiality. Again, if you were to say, okay, this indigenous tribe or there was a textile maker here, so you might see some textile or weaving, you might see a specific color story that is directly derived from all the historical reference points that we pull from. Because Pantone, let me pause right there before I go on this tangent.
No, I love it. I love it because it speaks to so many things, right? It speaks to the importance of, if you don't feel it, you won't fight for it. Like, feeling is so important for every part of the work, whether it's inspiration, whether it's how you execute, how you deliver, how you talk about it. Like the feeling around these things are so important. And, when you think about developers, I mean, you don't think good things, right? Necessarily when you think about, particularly living in, and I could say in a gentrifying neighborhood, right? Developers don't really have a good reputation, and you never feel like they're interested in in creating something that's of quality, you just think numbers and price, and so for you to be able to say that you can get their attention and you can get them to pause and want to develop based on what you're presenting is really, I mean, I'll tell you that that's really powerful.
It's powerful. And I will say this, for every 5 developers that don't want to get it, there's 1 to 2 who do. Right. But I think I often find the power in knowing that I'm doing something for the greater good. And the feeling piece, and especially as a woman, it's like, oh my gosh, she's all in her feelings. That's all right. It's my feelings and my gut that has allowed me to get where I'm at. And again, this idea of confidence. Everybody wants to be too cool, too proper, too this, too excellent and well-spoken. But are you excited? Are you impassioned? Like, it translates. People read into it. So if I didn't feel it deeply, if I didn't feel it, it wouldn't translate into like, man, I can tell she's really in. I can tell like they're serious about how wanting to create equitable spaces for people. They're serious about wanting us to want to do better, not condemn us, but wanting us to. I feel it. They feel that energy. And if I was trying to be too cool because I'm the CEO and founder,
right,
it doesn't translate. You gotta feel it. Right. Yeah. It's the humanity of it.
Tell us about some of the responses in the places that you have developed when people walk in or people who have been there for a minute. Because one of the quotes that I read, there were 2 things that I had read that one was, these people in air quotes don't deserve it. And the other one was, you have to make everything like vinyl and hard because they're going to want to have sex on them. Like, so the attitude about who these people are, right? When these people finally get to exist in your spaces, what's some of the feedback that you get?
So one of my favorite things to do is like go walk a project and like look at super like nondescript, because nobody's gonna think like, oh, there's the interior designer. So I just go and I'll hear property management folks doing tours and they'll be like, oh my God, is this affordable housing? Like, can I really live here? One woman, she remarked one time, when I walked into this room, I realized change was possible for me. That deeply resonated in my soul. Another one is, that the property management team, they was like, you need to secure all the knickknacks and the tchotchkes and the vases. And I go, we won't do that. And then I come back and they go, Kia, you were right. The residents take so much pride in this space. And they talk about how like, man, we want to make sure it stays like this. Oh, wait. Are you bringing this furniture in for us? Yeah. Is it going to stay here? This soft sofa? Absolutely. So it's always this kind of surprise that this is for them. And it is. And it's almost as equally as surprising when I run down all my accolades and it's like, and then I'm a Black woman too. Cause I'm not in a Black space and I'm not in a Black profession, but who really is, but, it's for them. It's for them, and it's by someone who looks like them. And I think they find homage in that. They really do.
So this was supposed to be my first question. I'm going to ask it now. Why is the space we live in, why is design so important for any of us and for all of us?
Design is important because, and I hate regurgitating statistics, but we spend 97% of our time indoors, whether that's our home or our office space, food and beverage, hospitality, our work. We spend our time indoors, right? And specifically our homes or the apartment you rent, the home you own. That's where you rest, you celebrate, you nourish your soul. Even in today's advent, you work, right? So the design of our homes and our spaces is really where we cultivate and care for ourselves. And when you think about, well, what do you need to care for yourself? Or what do you do when you need to care for yourself or feel good? It's typically something soft and cozy, something beautiful like art. It's kind of the picture frames of your family. It's the decorative lighting that's an accessory. It's the bedding. It's the culmination of all these intangible things that bring you goodness and joy, which make design relevant and necessary and a human right, right?
And a human right.
That's what makes it important. And it's one of those intangible things that you won't know, like, man, it was the recessed light fixture. Man, it was the pillow. It was the culmination of all the things. It's this intangible thing. You can't describe it, but you feel it and you know it when you have access to it.
Right.
You feel it. You feel it. And that's why design, everything is design. And it's about adornment. And in my profession, I am an interior designer. You can also call me an interior architect. You can call me an interior decorator. All these three lanes are very like, well, I'm not a decorator. I'm a designer. And I'm not an interior designer. I'm an interior architect. Look, at the end of the day, because one person fluffs pillows and all this other stuff. And I'm like, but it's the decoration, it's in the adornment and the softness of spaces that people gravitate towards too. You can call me interior decorator. You can call me interior designer. I create space for people and I change their lives. I bring in softness, decoration, illumination, and adornment and color to their lives. And that is powerful. That's how we bring joy and healing to people through those elements.
Yeah. I love that you call it a human right because we all deserve, right, to live in beautiful spaces, right? You also have a number of trademarks. And
Yes.
So I'd like you to sorry, there's one I want to take that you said C's get degrees. I was just like, that needs to be on a t-shirt. But I said, she's probably got that trademarked already.
Okay, I do not. I learned years ago the power of of trademarking and registering statements, things, and entities. And what the one of them, which I make sure I hang my flag out really quickly, is design equity. After the murder of George Floyd, in every industry, everyone was talking about equity, 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 equity. In my space of interior design and architecture, it was like, oh, design equity. I'm like, y'all been talking about this. We've trademarked this now 8 years ago. This isn't a trend. It isn't a moment. This is our foundation, and you all are late to the game. So if you want to use that language, I will send my beast of a trademark attorney after you, quick, fast, and in a hurry.
In a hurry.
The other one is determined by design, our company name. I've also registered as a registered mark. At the end of our emails, we say, have a determined day, because that's truly what we feel like, have a determined day. And my favorite is I am my own hero. That is another registered mark. The People's Design Firm, because we truly are a firm of the people. But we probably have about 6 to 8 registered marks, and we use them in various ways and various classes. And I will say some of them we did on our own, and then 2-3 years later we got an amazing trademark attorney who really helped us figure out how to monetize and protect and properly use our trademarks. It's one of those things I heard it in passing from a white artist, and I will not even acknowledge them in this space. But that's how I started trademarking a lot of things.
The other thing I wanted you to talk about is your thoughts on the challenges that the industry faces around diversity. And you have some very strong I don't, are you hearing that? Is the music
No,
coming
I'm
through?
not
I'm
hearing
sorry.
anything.
Okay, good. Okay. You have some very strong thoughts about, you know, why major companies are struggling with diversity and what what really needs to be done for people who are serious about operating, having their companies more diverse, employing more diverse contractors or designers. Um, I'd like you to talk a little bit about why, not, and it's not just the your industry, obviously, why these industries are struggling with diversity.
Beautiful question. I remember at the height of all the diversity, equity, inclusion conversations, and I just remember saying, so business owner, company, organization, did you look at the compensation of all your team members of color? And did you do a pay gap or pay study based on race in your company or organization? Did you do that? No? But you donated to some black, brown organization. It doesn't matter. If it does not affect your bottom line as a business or organization, then you've done nothing and you don't want to do anything. So the first thing I say, oh, so how much are your brown employees paid? And your black ones, your Indians, your Native American, your Asian, what they pay? What that look like? It starts there. It starts there with compensation. To me, because it filters back to this idea of the wealth gap for men, for women, people of color. So if companies don't address it internally, in-house, and how they compensate people of color, they've done nothing, period, full stop. That's step one. Step two is, and in the advent of LinkedIn, if we're in the boardroom and we look around the room and we see all white people or all white men or more dominantly, men, but no women of color. Read the room, and whoever is missing, go and find them. And in business, there's this anecdote where your revenue stream should be a third, a third, a third, a third of service, a third of product, a third of X. The same thing should happen in these rooms, these boardrooms, and in your workplace culture and your leadership. A third, a third, a third. If you don't have a third of every demographic, again, it's not rocket science. Go to LinkedIn. I remember I was looking for a speaker for something, and I couldn't find them. Let me go look at LinkedIn, because I'm going to go look at LinkedIn. It's 8 times out of 10 there's a photo, and I can identify that person's Native American, that person is Pacific Islander, that person is black, that person might be Latina face, and go find those people and bring them in. People have to want to do it, because the resources are there. Go to an HBCU. Look for the minority version of any professional association, which they all exist. The Association of Black Doctors, the Association of Black Accountants, the Association of Minority X, right? Go to those organizations and those entities that they exist and search for those people to bring that third, a third, a third into your organizations and your boardrooms. If you don't want to do that work, then you really don't want any change. Those are very 3 simple things. It's not complicated.
It's so true. And you yourself are an example of that, because you've been very deliberate in also creating a diverse team. How big is your team?
My team right now is amazing. 13 amazing human beings. Those are my team, my squad. I adore them. I love them as human beings.
Wow. And you've been operating now for 10 years in business? Or is it
It'll
11?
It'll be 12 in September.
12 in September. Wow. Right.
So
that
a
is
C student from Portsmouth, Virginia.
Yeah, that's very significant to be a small business, to have a team of 13, right? And to be in business for almost 12 years. That is also quite an accomplishment. One of the other things that I liked is that, so you've had a lot of different experiences. And one of the things that's been consistent with the folks that we've had on the show is that your journey and everything that you do shapes you, even if it was something that you didn't intend to do or you fell in it by accident. Like, everything that you've experienced helps you in what you've done. And so I've read that you've talked about how being in the military really helped shape you in a lot of ways. And so for our audience, I'd like you just to list off a couple of the things that have really
Oh,
worked for you.
absolutely. So I served in the military for a total of 22 years across active duty, reserve, and the guard in the Air Force. And
So even while you were building the business,
yes,
you were still in the military. Yes.
yes, yeah. Life hack, but I won't go down that tangent. Some of the things I learned that I hold dear to me from the Air Force is um, attitude reflects leadership. If your team isn't doing the thing or performing or is this, is that, we're always quick to say, well, they're not. And it's like, but attitude reflects leadership. What are you modeling? What are you doing? It's number one. Number two, no surprise, service before self. Um, and this one is my favorite, is to be a good wingman. I'm a beast of a wingman. And if can I share a quick story?
Oh, please, please.
So I knew I was on the tail end of my military career, but I just was kind of holding on to it. And I was in the DC Guard when George Floyd was murdered and the DC Guard got activated. And I'm a little business owner, and they're like, Kia, you're activated. You need to report for duty. And I'm like, what? And my job at that time in the Guard was like HR. And for us in that role, we were responsible for making sure we knew where everybody was and accountability. And in the rush of everything, myself and a couple other people from my office, we get there early and they're like, if you have your bag, report here, boom, 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 boom. So about five of us from our office was there. And, one person was like, I forgot my bag. Another person was like, oh, I don't have all my things. And then another person, another airman, her name was Kelly Wilson. She had all her stuff. And so she went to that other side where they was like, go here. And I was like, I could get out of this too. But I could not leave my wingman. So myself and Sergeant Wilson were the only two people from our shop who ended up literally being on the street for 12 and 18 hours at the height of all the protests around George Floyd. And that was the first time there was this very clear distinction of being a Black woman in this white man's uniform. And I was so conflicted, but I would not leave my wingman. You never leave your wingman ever. That stayed very true to me to this day. So yeah.
Wow, thank you for that. And so I have one last question, because I literally could have you on here.
Not yet.
We're already past the time, but I have one more question for you. And it's an important one, because the work you do is advocacy. It's true advocacy. I have a lot of feelings about folks who call themselves advocates. You do really true advocacy work. But you've also been really clear about the importance of seeing a therapist and making sure that that you are taken care of mentally, so that you can go out and do the work and fight, right? Oftentimes on behalf of the people you're serving. So, the last thing that I want to ask you about is the importance of taking care of your mental health. And so you have been really clear in the importance of seeing a therapist and taking care of yourself mentally, because it is hard work just dealing with the racism, the bias, the and fighting, right, for things that are just not commonplace in our society. And so a lot of us, we're much better. I think people talk about therapy Black folks talk about therapy much more than they ever have. Many more people are willing to do it. Or I should say, many more people are willing to admit that it's important. But I'd like you to talk to the importance of actually doing it, actually submitting, and taking the time to take care of yourself mentally.
Absolutely. And I want to, I'm going to try and be as concise as possible because there's two really important stories I want to share.
Oh, please share them.
Okay. The first one is one. I'm really proud of myself because I have not said a curse word this entire time, and typically I have very colorful language. I really do, but that's just how I talk and how I was growing up. But anyway, so years ago we were working on this project, and the person, they just kept fighting and they wouldn't do what we said. And when I say I cussed them out, I cussed them out. I ain't even use a cuss word. That's how bad it was. Like it was a thing. And I was like, whew, that is not about them. They triggered something that gave you such a visceral reaction that you went way left, right? It was inappropriate. I don't want to say unprofessional because I don't subscribe to that construct. It was disrespectful. It was all the things. And I literally had to be like, what is that about? What is that about? The minute you let an external factor or thing or person get you riled up, you got to go, wait, is it me? That's right. And I literally went and I got into therapy, deeply into therapy, and I probably spent 18 months in therapy. And I remember I walked into this room for a new client, and they goes, man, I felt your energy before you walked into the room. I said, that's 18 months of good therapy, my friend. Now, I just said, I told a client that I'm in therapy. That's a business relationship and transaction. And yes, I think everyone's talking about therapy in the context of mental health and all these things. But is it truly the leaders, the CEOs, the president? Is it truly the thought leaders and people of industry talking about it in a deeply tangible way and saying, hey, I'm doing this too? And I'll give you present day. Last year, 2023, or late 2020, 2022, 2023, I gave a speaking engagement, and I had took on a teaching job at a university, and it was probably the darkest thing that I've done. And it had me in deep, deep depression and suicidal ideations for 18 months of my life. And I had never experienced anything like that. And I remember I was giving a speaking engagement, and it just so happened to be during Mental Health Month. And I said to the audience, I was like, people have been asking where I'm at. And most of the times I'm honest and I say, well, for the better part of the past year, I've been trying not to murder myself. And the audience member kind of chuckles. I'm like, well, why you laugh? And she goes, I don't know. Maybe it's the way you said it. And I was like, it's because you don't expect someone like me who has all the accolades and all the things to even have an inkling to talk about suicidal ideations. And she goes, yeah. And I wasn't trying to put this person on the spot, but it's kind of like we create these false idols and the versions of people that we want them to be, that when they are deep in the struggle, if it doesn't sound like what you think it's going to look like for that type of person, then you don't hear it. And there's not more leaders or people of prominence talking about one, therapy, but two, suicidal ideations, right? And how you can exist and function, and that can also be happening. And I remember in the deepest, darkest moment of it, I was sitting in my condo in Atlanta. Something was happening. I was sitting in this laundry room with a knife in my hand and a blanket over my head, and the laundry basket pushed up against me so I could not hurt myself. And I have a great girlfriend. We're kind of like each other's support system. Like it's at a level, whatever. And that was on a Tuesday. And then on a Wednesday, I had to get up and go give a speaking engagement. And I walk into this room, I do my spiel, and the woman says, she sends me a message. She goes, I hope this doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, but as soon as you walked into that room, I felt safe. And I go, I know how to do that because nobody does it for me. And a big part of how I operate is I don't want anyone to have to experience things that I've experienced. And some of it, and I don't want to look like they're extreme, but if we talk about it, if we're honest about it, if we're transparent about it, right? If we're not worried about being embarrassed or our ego, then it will become a more something that is like real, and change can happen when you are deeply honest about it. But August of last year was the first time that I was not suicidal. Yeah.
And therapy helped you.
Therapy, mental health, checking in with myself, slowing down, understand what it is that I needed, making sure I was doing things that were truly aligned with my core, my path, and my purpose, and therapy.
And I think what's also really important with what you're saying too is, so last year, August, you had been like 11 years in business, right? So all of this time, you had been extremely successful. You're heavily awarded. We didn't even talk about all of the awards that you have.
Because I got them all.
You have them all. And I loved when I watched the interview where you were just like, yes, where he kept saying what you had and you were just acknowledging so confidently. And I loved that. But yes, you were able to amass all of these things, right? At a time when you were still feeling like I could take myself out of here.
Yes. Because I took on a full-time teaching position. So I was splitting my time between running my business and trying to be a full-time professor in a private white institute, which it was almost kind of like I started my business because I wanted to work for a firm that had leadership that looked like me and that had a team that mirrored me and that was about its people. So I protected myself in this thing that I built. I was protected. And I go to teach at the collegiate level because I would go speak at these colleges and these Black and brown students would say like, oh my God, I've never seen a Black designer. And I was like, that means I need to be in academia.
Right.
And I get this job at this PWI and it was immediately like, they wanted me here, but you didn't. And it's swallowing me. And I'm trying to operate how I operate. The students
they've got a box for you.
Yes. The students was like, Professor, you see us, you're great. And I felt constrained and weighted. And the foundation of what this institution said it wanted to be and do, it was false. It was a false narrative. And I was watching them diminish these students. And I was going fucking insane. And because I kept saying to myself, the reason I have all the awards is because I have a beast of a work ethic. And I kept saying to myself, and Black women, we say this all the time, I can do this. I can do it. I can do this. I can do it. I can be exceptional. I can do it. But we forget we always have the agency of choice. And the minute I said,
save everybody.
Yes. The minute I said, I can do this, but I don't have to, that's when I decided to resign. And my students were so upset. And I told them, I was like, hey, my friends, look, this isn't good for me. And when you all are in spaces that don't feel good and it starts to show up in little ways that it eats at you, that's when you know you got to move and you have the choice to always move.
And honestly, that was probably the biggest lesson you could have taught them.
Yeah.
And so they will still benefit. They are benefiting from you being present in their lives. Yeah. Kia, thank you so much for being here. So where can we find you, follow you, and support you and keep up with all of your progress?
Oh, wow. So two very simple places. You can go to determinedbydesign.com's website. You can also go to kiaweatherspoon.com. And both of those is our Instagram is Determined by Design, and mine is Kia in Weatherspoon on Instagram. And if you go to my Instagram, I do this thing called Morning Moves, which is a little treat. So I hope to see some of you there.
Oh, well, I will. And I can guarantee that some folks will be joining us as well. So thanks again so much. We look forward to following you, keeping up with you, and wishing you all the best and all the success. You deserve it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening and tuning in today. We will be back again next week with another great guest. Take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Executive producer Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcast. On social media on IG at business_first_podcast. Follow the Mean Old Line Media Podcast Network on IG at Mean Old Line Media. Get the Mean Old Line Media app in the App Store or Google Play. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.